calling from?
Virginia Beach area.
Yeah. So we're just across the state, 5 hours away. Um, it's raining. It is raining crazy here today. So it's a little warmer today than what it's been being. Did you guys get any snow down there?
Uh-uh.
No
No, no
snow.
snow.
Does the ocean air push the snow in? Is that
And the
something that?
and the water stays warmer because it's not a solid freeze.
Yeah, that
Like
makes it nice.
we don't have a solid ground freeze here.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw where the Myrtle Beach, Savannah, and then Orange. We'd been down there last year where they got significant amount of snow, which just throws them into a tailspin, I'm sure.
I'm sure it does.
Um, Brenda, say your last name for me.
Neckvatal.
Neckvatal. I knew that. I just didn't want to butcher it with my country twang.
Right.
And the cool part, I haven't talked to you since we were last May when we were all together. I mean, we back and forth online or we're doing whatever. Um, you had a really really cool story today. You got your book. We'll get to those. But like, tell me like what's a day in your life look like?
Oh, day in my life. My life. Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur, not just a human results professional, but Uh, I wake up and I touch every single one of my businesses in some format or another. I really like the challenge of diversifying income and revenue and balanced out with dealing with people and balanced out with not dealing with people. You know?
What is your businesses? How many and what are they? How many you got?
I have about five.
Really?
I do.
Uh,
And they're all
um,
small businesses, but they're all, they're profitable. Um, More or less, there's a couple of components that are wrapped into some of them, but like I do some marketing education, I do the leadership coaching and development side. I still consult on crisis management.
yeah.
Um, I have a microgreens business. I have a snarky greeting card business. I have a natural skincare business, and I'm also a swing investor too. So
Do
I
you do you run those as a team, or is it something you just got low touch points on, or what
I
is that?
have a couple of people that I contract in, but for the most part, it's me. But I
Yeah.
just have really great systems and processes in place that help me keep the ball rolling.
W- Did you find the systems and processes first, or did you find the business first?
I do them simultaneously.
So I'm saying, was you in business and you were like, oh crap, right? And deploy, or was you able to already be efficient and you're like, oh, this is easy for me to deploy what I already do in over here and it just meshes well, right?
Yeah.
Did you have, I guess what I was asking there is, did you have failure and then have to put better systems and processes in, or was you able to lift it because it's all kind of rises together?
Yeah, most of it all rises together. But you know what? That's the thing, is that when you're in business, it's not all going to rise smoothly and at the same time. I mean, you're going to have stuff that, you know, it's gonna something's gonna break. Like everybody's got broken stuff in their businesses. Every single one of us, right? You can't have a business that's operating perfectly. That's a very unrealistic expectation. Perfection is, the lowest possible value you could ever associate to anything because
Yeah.
you're never going to reach it, right? So for me, where I find processes break down is when things start to shift, and in a good way for business. So something now no longer doesn't work the way it used to. And just like everywhere else in life, when it comes to change, we don't like change for a reason. And the biggest reason isn't because change makes us like we just don't want to do it, which that could be a thing. But to be honest with you, change is all about disrupting mastery.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
We got this down. Like we know what to expect. And when things change, we don't know what to expect. We're uncomfortable with what we don't know what to expect. And the last thing we want to do is deal with things that we don't know what to expect, right? So but then change could also introduce other elements that we haven't thought of, we haven't considered, we don't have space for. And so that's the reason why people really don't like change, is that it introduces new elements where, life is working just fine. If it ain't broken, why fix it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do it this way because it's the way we've always done it is a big thing that I hear. And it's also, I think, probably one of the biggest anchors you can throw out.
It is, but I see that more as a limited mindset.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference in change, and then like everything's like, well, crap, this doesn't work anymore, so let's fix it. There's that kind of change. That's the mastery that I'm talking about, right? But then you also have the people. This is the way we've always done it. That's a limited way of thinking and looking at something, and those are two very different types of mindsets.
Yeah.
See, he agrees.
Yeah. Yeah. We got the dogs involved. Yeah.
You're the
No,
director of security.
yeah. Um, you are able to not only do you do tons of work probably inside of other people's business, but you have this self awareness inside of your own. A lot of entrepreneurs lack that. I talk to a lot of marketers, and the first thing they'll say is like, "Don't look at my website." I'm like, "Why not?" Or, "Well, because my website's horrible because I'm spending all my time over here on this person's." I'm like, "That's it's a reflection of you, right?" So you have this, man, you have this ability to where you can recognize inside of your own business. Not only are you giving tons of advice on hiring, firing, all these hot button issues that I hope we can talk about, but you're also able to maintenance and be self aware inside of your own business of where you need to grow or change. I think that's a skill that not everybody has.
No, looking at yourself in that light is never comfortable for anybody
Uh,
because it means that you have to admit that you're not doing something properly. One of my favorite mentors has a core value, his number one core value. He carries this throughout his entire, all of his businesses. Every practice that he does is never let good be the robber of great. And so when you are out to make something pretty amazing happen for yourself, that's literally striving for a level of greatness. Well, the if you don't live up to that level of greatness, then good is going to rob that experience from you. So why would you do that? Like if you want a great life, if you want really good things, and you know what? Not everybody wants that, and that's fine. If they're like, I'm happy where I am, right? I've got enough. I'm very comfortable, confident with where I am. Like, there's nothing wrong with that either. There's
yeah.
something to be said for stability and not putting yourself out for risk when it comes to, you know, growing and expanding.
No, you're spot on with that. Where does that come from? Where does those skills? Was Brenda born with those, or did
No,
you
no,
acquire
I was so
those,
not
or
born with those.
no? Is that
So,
that's tried and true, right?
so far removed. Yeah. No, it came down to, for me, it was, I don't, what is it, like maybe I was 22 years old, something like that, where I just decided it's like, I really don't like this version of my life, or at least what I see in it. And, back when I was 22, there wasn't a lot of groups or coaches or anything. Like, it was kind of unheard of to go develop yourself. You
Yeah,
know, I didn't know very much about leadership at the time, but I always felt like a square peg in a round hole as a result of it. Because I struggled with, making those kinds of connections. I had a very low value, low way of thinking. And so over the years, I mean, I think it was probably the very first good chunk of wisdom that I latched onto. Do you remember? God, I'm like dating myself. Night around like the early '90s and the Dr. Laura Schlesinger show. You remember that?
I remember the early '90s. So we're dating each other
Yeah,
now, but
I know,
I
right?
definitely you're talking, and when you were saying I graduated in '92, so I
Okay.
was probably eyes off of, if it wasn't Maury or Ricky Lake,
Okay.
some of those shows, right? I
Fair
probably
enough.
Jerry Springer's coming out a few years later, so I was a little more into the gossip scene
Fair
probably
enough.
than the
Well,
personal development side.
well, this was a personal development radio show that came on Monday through Friday,
Gosh,
and people would call in and talk about their problems, and she'd call them out on their behaviors, right? And so she always had this really great quote, and that is that when you behave your way into a situation, you have to behave your way out of it. And I remember that, just I was
that's a
living in
good
Hawaii.
one. Woo!
It was great. I loved it. I was living in Hawaii and I was driving around listening to her show, and I heard her say that and I was like, wow. that I've never heard anybody talk that way before. So that's where it started. And then over the years, it was always looking for an opportunity to improve and grow and enrich. And now I'm like part of 3 masterminds, all dedicated to 3 different types of aspects of my life. And, I just constantly develop myself.
Yeah, same. I'm not in three, but I'm in some significant ones where it's constant. Even in the groups that we worked around, just those little nuggets from Johnny each day, or we jump in and it's not as there's just you know that you can go inside that group and ask some questions and get some answers from some serious folks that have been there and kind of done that. And we don't spend a lot of time chit chatting, and we're kind of direct, and we post whatever needs to be posted, like what Rob did the other day, and we move on. But I don't know, like just the presence there sometimes just gives you a little bit of safety net that you have that group that's behind you, and then I have another learning group that's we're meeting actively and weekly and stuff, and then I run some of my own programs too, right? So
Yeah.
to speak to what you're talking about, even just running my own programs, I got to go learn, I got to go teach, I have to go mentally prepared, and a lot of times it's areas where I may not necessarily be comfortable, like. Um, especially when you get into some of this past history things along those lines, and you're just trying to. And what I learned is me just talking about my story and things along those lines has been just super therapeutic for me, and I'm helping people along the way. Then you transfer that around to the business side of I know enough about finance, enough about business, but it's uncomfortable, and life is nudging me to learn more about it. And so I've been teaching more about it because I'm in business and I have to keep up with my own numbers. So versus me hiding under the covers and seeing if I can get someone else to do it, I've been just kind of embracing it and trying to go teach more people just basic business finance because it allows me to have those, get used to those uncomfortable and which becomes comfortable conversations.
Yeah. My big shift for this year, I took on, I'm really, really more of an ops person. Like something needs to get done, I'm going to go do it. I'm a big doer,
Yeah.
right? And for a long time, I pushed back on being the prime driver of making sales. And I'm like, this has got to shift. And it's not that I hadn't been doing a good job, it just wasn't where I was living. And so I decided, because I don't like the concept of selling,
Yeah.
I don't like sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
really don't. And it just it's and probably the biggest reason is that I don't feel authentic when I'm doing sales as I've been quote unquote taught. So I decided to make a shift. And so basically for 2025, my in this dance of business that we're doing, my the foot that I lead with is developing new business.
Yeah.
Not developing a new business. I'm talking about developing new revenue, developing new, and just putting that at the forefront. And it's been it's been an amazing shift. And some people are like, well, duh. But the thing is that I
Yeah,
have
it's
these
still done.
processes in the
Yeah.
background because now I can focus in on developing more revenue because I know my processes, my automation, my AI that I have working, like all the things that I have working. So I'm not the one in the business,
Yeah.
right? I'm working on my business. And that's ultimately been my goal, right? So now I'm in a position where I've got everything nice and leveled out. Now it's scalability. Now it is scaling for this year.
What are you like? Give me an idea of an item that you're selling that was uncomfortable.
Just selling, period.
Just selling in period, like your programs or your stuff, right? So this is so when I teach sales, and this is another place. All right, you know my story coming out of public safety. All
Yep.
right, so I land in this job, and I'm selling trailers, right? And it's I'm like, well, I have a great mentor, but I'm still trying to figure out that voice. And I started reading and consuming. And then when they were like, this moment come over me, and they go, "You're not selling, you're solving a problem." And like your phone's ringing because of the problems you solve, not because you're trying to like you're not. You picture the TV guys like, "All right, buddy, come on in, let's get you signed up." That's the
Yeah.
impression I had of the salesperson. And then I was reading, and I was just trying to find my way there. And finally, like one day, it's like, dude, you don't sell, you solve problems. And once you realize what you do solving a problem. So then My process that was when someone showed up and when I said, "Hey, what's your plan? What are you going to be doing this trailer?" They would say, "Well, I'm going to be. Well, me and my kids is going to use it for racing. Now I'm impacting the family. I'm going to use it to haul my lawnmower. So now I'm building a business. So that you'll hear me talk when I speak in business word. I always talk about the end. Is focus on the end result and the end emotion or feeling that you want that your client's going to be experienced. Sell that. Don't worry, your product then will sell itself.
Yeah.
But it's hard, and it's hard. It's hard to grasp that, but what you'll find, and we're speaking, folks, we're speaking to y'all. Me and Brenda's, I'm just putting this out there for you guys' value is what you'll find is if someone comes to you looking for your solution, you have a duty, an obligation to give it to them, to provide it to them at a cost, because that is your job, is to help solve their problem. And in the fitness, that was a way that was kind of presented to me as well. It was like you're the solution to their problem, man. Why you want to send them to somebody else?
Yeah. And you know that, and I absolutely agree. It is, I have a 30 plus year career in the field of human resources, and there's a ton of selling that has to happen. It's not on an outside, it's on the inside,
Yeah.
right? And so it's one of those things where if you pull the string, then all of a sudden you realize that things are going to start coming loose. And, look, leaders own every single problem in the business, every single one. Now, they may not be the ones solving everything, but they are the ones that own every single problem in the business. With that being said, leaders look at problem solving differently, right? We have to make decisions based off of money. We don't have deep pockets. No company really has that deep pocket as a small business or, growing business or whatever. Like, pockets only go so deep. So money is an important factor. But then there's also the concept of, like, maybe it's not a problem that the leader sees as an important problem to solve as maybe somebody else in the company does, right? So if you look at it this way, so if you have a hierarchy of leadership within an organization, and you have somebody who is, a steady Eddie or a frontline person, and they say, "Hey, listen, there's this problem. Here's what my recommendation is to solve this," or, "Hey, can we get some help to solve it?" Well, the leader up here may not see the problem at the same level of intensity as somebody does down here. Why?
Yeah.
Because their vision is different, right? So for a leader solving a problem, sometimes not addressing it is exactly the same thing as solving it. It's not a problem they see that requires resolve. In the meantime, this person down here is going, WTF, like, I just brought you a problem, you're not willing to help address it. It's an issue. But the thing is, it's an issue to that person. It's not an issue to this person.
Yeah.
Different field of vision, right? So in the field of human resources, when I've been in seat, or even as I still continue to consult, just in a very different manner now, but when I start bringing up these issues, here's my client, here I am, and the issue intersects, but I'm going this way, they're still going this way, right? Everybody's still moving forward, but it's hard to get the problem to cross over and help them understand that if you do this while we're fixing this, you are going to eliminate the risk of this outcome. They don't see it as an immediate issue to fix. And that is a real challenge, because the type of problems that exist when it comes to working with employees and human performance and all that other stuff, the bigger implosion is going to come later down the road when you didn't address it when you had the moment to. That's a hard sell. And if you want to know why I get so, like, twitchy when it comes to selling, is because all those years that I've had to say, if you don't do this,
Yeah.
and then get turned away like I'm crazy, I don't know what I'm talking about, you're just hysterical, you're full of crap, this is never going to happen. And I'm like, I'm telling you, so at the minimum 3 months, between 3 to 9 months, this is going to come up for you. You know how many times somebody's come back to me and said, "Oh my God, I should have listened to you." Blah, blah. Like, I can't help you now. Now I have to turn you over to an attorney.
Yeah.
So by ignoring my suggestion, guess what? You just increased your stress level. You're now dedicating more labor dollars to this, and you now have to pay an attorney, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even with the best business layout, the best solution, like here's the reason why, here's how it's going to help your organization. It's always going to be about what's important to the apex leader as to whether or not. So it's going to matter in the long run, but it may not always intersect until it blows up. Then both paths run right into it.
And listen, folks, we're talking the simplest of problems. If you're going, I'll send you the episode. This is a conversation that I had. I was telling one of my guests the other day. We're talking similar, and I was like, the lady was like, I got, we have a no gossip policy, but I got someone gossiping. I go, well, you need to address it. And and then finally she was like, yeah, but we have the policy. And I go, yeah, but you're the leader. And there was
Yeah,
this disc and I go, here's, I mean, what you're going to find as a leader is your people need you to lead them and to just give them time. And that, so by the time we were done, I was like, I need you, you're getting ready to have this culture, you're getting ready to have an implosion of negative culture because you are eyes off. And what, like in her world, she's just expecting everybody to do everything. We signed the agreement saying you're not going to gossip. No, I'm like, yeah, but it don't work like that. I said, there's a problem that's brewing, bring her in. And so what we decided on was she was going to spend 10 minutes with every employee talking about what she could do to help them. And I'm like, you're leading like you're like it's your job. You need to go do it. I'm like, leading is what can I do to help you be more efficient in your job, and what can I do? Now, sometimes you end up having to change people because you can't change people,
right.
but ultimately is and she the same thing what you just said. All of her fingers were pointed out at her team, and finally I was standing there with my words just kind of twisting them inwardly, and it was like, listen, if you don't go and lead your team, you're going to have a culture problem, and you're going ultimately it's going to be the end of your business, or you're going to have to replace everyone. So I hope she did. She's supposed to loop back in with me, and I hope that she did because this was not we're talking everyday small business, probably shoestring income enough, enough to where everybody's making money, but they don't have a lot of room for error. And sometimes we're not talking Fortune 500 and some of the other places that you've worked.
Right. Yeah. I remember, so I have like two stories that are very specific to this example that I can
Now,
talk
hold on. Let me tell the audience this. Brenda's stories will absolutely blow your mind. So make sure I've heard her speak. All right, so don't be like, oh, it's just some lady's gonna tell me some boring human HR stuff around the water cooler. I was sitting there going, holy crap, I got to go on after this. Are you kidding me? So don't just fast forward. Brenda's stories will absolutely have you on the edge of your seat.
So do you want me to start with the lesser of the two, or do you want me to
Oh,
bring the Mac Daddy one home first?
no, it's your story. Hey, listen, all right, you start where you want to, but just folks, just know there's more coming. Because I was like, you sit there and you're like listening, and this is me in the audience that day, and I was going, and I found myself, and I was standing, but I'm trying to get closer to you because I'm going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding
I
me?
I know. It's really funny. It's like I have this thing about me. It's like people are like, yeah, 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 speaker, she's got it. Yeah, but then you get me up on stage, and then I start just like getting
Yes.
into it. People are like, oh my gosh, right?
It was like a murder mystery that was unfolding, right? There was this man, I was going, yeah, and the cop in me, the police, because very intuitive, and I follow my gut, and I'm going, I feel like I need to call, and we need to get on this case.
I know that day I could hear heartbeats. That was
Yes.
so funny from the
All
stage.
right, so
So
don't tune out because you think we're
now
getting ready to bore you with some
here it
craziness.
comes. Here it
This is the
comes.
sweet spots.
Here it comes. Well, here's the thing. Like everybody can relate to these two stories, right? So the first one is I got a phone call from a business owner down south, and he's like, "Hey, listen," he says, "I have a toxic employee that I want to get rid of." And I'm like, "Okay, well, help me understand, why is this person toxic?" And they said, "Well, they're no longer doing the job. They're pushing back. They're getting really sassy with us, and quite frankly, we've kind of had it." And I'm like, "Okay, so is this a W-2 employee versus a 1099?" He says, well, he said, "Well, we started that way." And I'm like, oh, all right, well, tell me about that. And he's like, well, we gave her, we brought her in, we hired her as a W-2, and a couple weeks ago we had to convert her to a 1099. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, business hasn't been all too great, so there's an inherent risk just moving somebody from W-2 to a 1099. I said, you gave her a job offer? Yeah. I said, an offer letter? He says, yeah. And I said, she signed it? Yeah. And he said, well, did you do the same thing when you converted to a 1099? No. And I'm like, okay, that's a problem. And I say, so tell me about business. And he's like, well, business is a little slow. He said, that's why we moved her to 1099. And I said, okay. And he said, well, she's angry because, we haven't paid her for a while. And I'm like, well, how long is a while? And he says, about 6 weeks. And I'm like, I said, what is your normal payroll schedule? He says, every 2. I'm like, okay, so you don't have a toxic employee. She's just pissed.
Yeah.
And she has you. She's going to build a case against you. I said, so he said, well, how do I fix this? I said, you need to work with your CPA and an employment attorney to get this right. You gotta figure this out. I said, you're gonna owe back taxes on payroll taxes. And that's when he goes, well, he said, we're not really set up as a payroll company, as with a payroll company. I said, so wait a minute. You're paying a woman that you hired as a W-2, and you're paying her as a 1099, if you even pay her at all right now, and you've never set yourself up with the state as a employer where you're putting into unemployment insurance and everything. And he goes, yeah. And I said, yeah, you're going to need a big attorney, because this is a big mess and you're going to have to fix this, because she can take you to court right now and she will win. Like, I said, well,
Pay her and hope she goes away.
oh, dude, it
Right.
was like one more layer of, well, we got some tax issues. And I'm like, freaking fix it. Just go fix it. That's what you need to do. Fix your tax problems. Get yourself set up as appropriate as a and it was just like one thing. It's like, well, and it's like, oh my gosh, right? So, that happens. And especially with somebody who's younger, that he's never run a business, like he doesn't know what I know. But the minute I start saying, hey, you need to do this, it's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Right. So that was that one. The next good one
Well,
was,
hey, hang on, real quick, Brenda, real quick. Let me ask you a couple things on that one,
yeah,
right? All right. So what do you feel, Brenda? All right, so folks, if you don't know, you're figuring this out. Brenda is a human resource. I feel like she's probably not quite the wolf, but she's on the wolf and her probably ride together in the same car sometimes, right? I mean, she's the ultimate. I thought I was a mess cleanup person, but the messes she cleans up is makes me just want to
great.
not tell my stories, right? Because she gets called in for front end human HR related items and this and the other, but then in these scenarios to where it's turned really bad, she's got the broom, she's got the shovel, and she's the person that's going to come into your company and basically help you mitigate your shortcomings and the issues that you've overlooked through poor leadership, lack of leadership, whatever that might be, or just an employee that has gotten way too far out there. Brenda's the person who's going to come in either on the front end to help prevent that, or on the back end to help you clean up that mess. So that's probably the best intro that I've done for off the cuff there. But just knowing more about you from our previous meeting, my question is,
Sir.
what was the outcome?
Um, you know what? I don't know. He actually never circled
Yeah.
back again.
And do we know? Yeah, all right. So from the business world, it sounds like we hired maybe too fast. Our revenues may have been projecting, but we didn't have the plan in place to support payroll W-2 employees. So when they landed there, either our revenues dipped or we just weren't ready to receive those employees, or the employee was a non like here's the thing I ran into one time where they hired a salesperson and the person wasn't selling. So it was just their whole job was for them to get their revenues up, but the person they had hired to do the job was underperforming and they was struggling there. So those are a couple of issues that may lead you to this, folks. So your business folks that are listening to this, when you're getting ready to, Brenda can tell you, but these are some things that when you're getting ready to make that first hire, is remember that person you either have the money to pay for them, or they have to be able to generate income for your business that pays basically for their position
Yep.
for them to be there. Um,
Absolutely. And you know,
big lessons there, man.
oh, I got another good one for you like this. So, the thing is that there's a big misconception that you can make every employee like a 1099.
Yeah.
And there's not, because there's certain parameters around that. And they both come with inherent risk. Both of them. You're not going to be in business without risk. It's just impossible, right? The way of our legal structure, the way of our tax structure, it's like you're just going to eventually wind up running. And also we have a very litigious society as well. So, instead of, it's like being afraid of the dark, right? Or being afraid of the unknown. Instead of being afraid of the unknown, just mitigate your risk by doing everything as best as you possibly can. Ask good questions, get good answers. Make sure that you know what it is that you're doing before you start doing it. Like you understand what the risk is of actually hiring an employee. And really kind of get your ducks in a row. And that's where I'm going with this next one. So this person actually has become a very good friend of mine. She has a PR business and she operates internationally, and she's incredible at it. She's extremely successful, multi-million-dollar business, really knows her stuff. She's got that like je ne sais quoi, man. She just has it, and she can do things in the realm of PR that blow my mind. And she had talked to me several years ago and said, "Hey, listen, I have about 5 people that I work with. I want to do the HR thing right." I'm like, "Okay." She goes, "I'm going to need a handbook and I'm going to need blah blah blah." I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "Well, tell me more about how your business is set up." Turns out she has employees in Canada. She had employees over in Europe. I was like, "Okay." And I said, "How are you classifying them? Are you classifying them as a contractor or an actual W-2 employee?" And then she had people here in the US. And she goes, "Well, no, they're all contractors." And I kind of walked through with this with her, and I'm like, you know what? In all honesty, at least for the folks in the US, I'm like, you're right on that edge where, they start doing something a little different, or you start doing something a little bit different. Like you're in this really risky gray area. I said, honestly, if I were you, I would plug them in as W-2 employees, get yourself set up here in the United States. And, as far as the rest of the world, I don't have a lot of experience with international law because every country has different, employment laws. I said, so, at some point in time, you're going to have to look into that and get that sorted out. Well, I'm not sure if I'm ready to do that. I'm like, okay, so let me tell you what you're going to be up against. And I ran down a list of issues. She's like, well, my employees just love me. They're going to be fine. They're never going to turn on me. Okay.
Yeah.
3 months later, boom,
Whew.
I get the panicked phone call. Oh my God. I don't know what to, yeah, I don't know what to do. My people in Canada, people in Canada turned on me. The people here in the United States are turning on me. And I haven't even talked to the people over in Europe. And I'm like, okay, so tell me what's going on. They said that I'm not paying them enough, that I'm not paying them overtime properly. And I said, okay, so this is an easy fix, but unfortunately, you won't be able to work through me. Now you have to work through an attorney. So I got her an attorney, a really, really good one. And this is like probably a $25,000, $35,000 fix. So ultimately, at the end of the day, she sent me a letter. She's like, here, I want you to work with my ops person. Whose ops person was in like Ecuador. And so we were on the phone. She goes, we got this letter from the state of New York and we don't understand it. I'm like, okay. And I read it and I'm like, do you guys not have workman's compensation insurance? No. I said, well, how long have you had W-2 employees in the United States? A year and a half now. And I'm like, okay, let me help. I said, let me help you understand something. When you don't have workers' compensation insurance and you have W-2 employees, every state, that is a criminal offense. And they're like, what?
Said the C word, Brent.
Yeah, and they're like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, there are certain things that it's not always civil when it comes to employment law. It is there's criminal elements to this too." And they're like, "Well, what do we do?" And I said, "You get workers'
Yeah.
compensation insurance like
ASAP.
now, and ask how far back you can backdate it. Right? In New York, you can only go back 6 weeks." I said, "If you don't take care of this, according to this document, they're going to issue a warrant for the owner's arrest." And so everybody was like, holy crap. I'm like, call the attorney right now. Figure out how to solve this. Get this out of your line of sight. Like, just be done with it. So they did. They went. I don't really, I know she didn't get arrested, right? So apparently they fixed it. New York must have slapped him on the hand on the wrist with something, but
Well,
um,
Brenda, a lot of times that's when you say slap on the wrist, you don't have to go to jail, but the fine is life changing,
it is. It's a
right?
lot of money.
Yeah, they don't. If you folks don't like, hey, it's paid to play this and the other, like it's probably a couple $100,000 fine for that long
I
thing.
don't think that I wouldn't imagine it being that long, that much for that duration of time. But they're not going to get away with it. I mean, they're not going to walk out of it without feeling the burn. I don't
Yeah,
think a couple $100,000 is realistic. Probably about a good, maybe a, 10 to 20. I could see.
yeah,
That's still sizable. That's still
yeah.
painful. No
First
matter
of
no
all,
matter what size of the company.
not necessarily so bad for her multi-million-dollar business, but here's when you say multi-million-dollar business, they have bills too.
Absolutely. And even for a multi-million dollar business,
Yeah,
that if they could struck a check in the drop of a hat for $10,000 and it doesn't really impact the bottom line. But the thing is that the sting actually will always stay with the leader that had to deal with that. There's an emotional penalty that comes along with it.
a lot of folks don't know. They think most time if you're a single owner, you can get by, but soon as you add employee and you go to get workers comp, the policy's for you as well. And in Virginia, especially, like so, it's the owner's covered under that policy. Two, once you add that first employee, so it
Yeah,
becomes, and it's based off the number of people.
yeah.
All right, so I mean, that's a lot of cleanup. I mean, you got different. Not only we're in U.S. law, but I hope there are companies domestic here, but you got employees all over. That sounds like a cleanup. Is that cleanup? Is that what does
That
that
was
look
just
like?
clean up in the United States. They still had to deal with Canada. They still had to deal with the other countries because she didn't do it right. And lesson learned. Now she's straight as an arrow. Like it's a lesson she will never forget.
Yeah,
But in all fairness, we all have those lessons. Those lessons
yeah.
that we'll never forget, right? People in your life, experiences in your life are either a blessing or a lesson, right? One of the two.
Lady messaged me. I had a question about some regulatory stuff, and I knew that she had kind of like what we're talking about here, where I'm like, you've been through this. What's the title of this particular thing? And she messaged me back. She told me, but then she messaged like, hey, that business is no longer operational, and it was a lot of stress and different things. And this is what I told her. She's like, I don't know if I'll ever get in my own business again. I might go work part time for someone. And I messaged her back, and I go, nobody's embarrassed by this. Don't discount all those lessons you learned that can help move you forward. It's just we're all gonna learn them in some capacity. Either I'm gonna pay you, Brenda, to learn these lessons and teach me these lessons, or I'm gonna do it the way that just happens. Some way, somehow,
Yeah.
you're going to learn that lesson. So don't just walk away from oh crap, I never. Time goes on, right? And yeah, so what? You fell short. Forgive yourself, forgive everybody else around you, and move forward with the lessons learned that like what your friend did, where they can deploy that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man! And the other thing in business, like you said, you hit it right there. Most of the time when I teach, I'm like, listen, in business, ain't nothing we can't figure out. If it's this, that, or other, 9 times out of 10, a little bit it might cost us a little bit of money on this lesson we learned, but we can move on. That's one of the jailable ones, right? That comes with a warrant.
Yeah. So thankfully all that worked out. But
Can you
that
imagine? Can you imagine being in jail and you're in that cell, right, Brenda? And
no.
everybody's like, "What you know? What I'm like, I killed a guy. I'm the man." And they get over to me and they're like, "All right, big guy, what you got?" And I'm like, "Freaking workers' comp, right?" So it's another. So
Yeah,
just
I'm a
keep on.
badass.
Yes,
I didn't pay
I
my
punched on my.
insurance.
Yeah, hey, and I don't mind doing it again if I need to, because I'm hard. All right, I'll do. Can you imagine having to be cell blocked with some of the baddest in the
Oh
world?
my god.
They get
I
when you're in,
know.
they'll daisy chain them together and they're going into court and they all do their appearance kind of at one time and they read off the charges. And here I am, I'm 5'7" on my best day if I'm wearing the right shoes. So I'm wearing flip flops in the middle of this line, and so I'm about 5'5" around all these other guys, and they get down to me and they're like, "Mr. Robertson, workers' comp fraud." And I'm like, and I've been bullsh crapping all the guys that's in the cell, and they're like, "You told us you kill people, man." I'm like, "Ah."
Not yet. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Well, here's something else that happens when people when they go through stuff like this, right? When it hits the fan, especially when I've told them, if you do this, this is what you're gonna. If you do this or don't do this, this is what you're gonna. I'm not a yes person in HR. I've never been
Oh,
that way.
wow.
I'm here to help you like get out of your own way. And there are times where people take it, there are times that they don't. Okay, but then what happens is you said it earlier, like there's nobody here being embarrassed about this but you. And as an owner, that is a horrible thing to feel. It will literally rock your self-confidence. You can rock yourself right out of your own self-confidence. And what I ultimately find, tell people, it's like, listen, just like what you said, there's very little here in the realm of HR that we can't fix. We what we can't fix is when we lose an employee's life.
Yeah.
Like life is the one thing I can't fix. Everything else is solvable, right? Everything else is solvable. I mean, I even have stuff that's going on in my world. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to deal with it. I've been, there's some things that I procrastinate on too, just because I'm not in a mental space to deal with it. But at the end of the day, I can still deal with it, right? I may wind up separating myself from a little extra cash to do it, but okay. I mean, we all have that, but that is not an excuse to lean on consistently, because ultimately what's going to happen is that things are just going to get worse for you. And I take my own advice on that too, right? So the things that are broken and not addressed in business, you have time, but you're playing beat the clock until you actually are face to face with those consequences. And there isn't anybody on this planet that is an exception to that last statement.
Yeah. You've what with your friend there? Did the business continue to grow?
Oh yeah.
All the things? No. So just yeah. So we want to echo. I want to exclamation point that like, hey,
Yeah, it
there
was a
was a
hiccup.
big deal for this conversation, but a hiccup in the road in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
lesson learned, everybody moves on. And we all have them in business. Every single one of us has them in business.
what do you in your HR stuff? It's all consulting work, right? Or speaking and teaching. Am I
A
right
lot
there?
of
Or is
I
that,
get contracted to teach, I get contracted to speak, and I get contracted to a lot more coaching and a
yeah,
lot more crisis counseling, or crisis not counseling, but crisis management. I've been working on a project for a year right now of a employer who had an employee that launched a very vicious viral campaign against them, and cancel culture is a real thing. The
yeah,
good news is that the owners of this business were not willing to back down. They wound up taking the employee to court. They won. The employee is not going to be able to pay for the damages. And at the same time, they worked hard to. I'm still working on the project, but their product and the core of their business, because of their core values, they were able to, yeah, they took a hit, but you know what? In less than a year, they were back to having their best month ever and still dealing with all of this crap, right? Going to court, doing depositions, like that's a time suck, it's a money suck, but at the same time, they're still moving forward and had their best month ever this year.
A year down, but a year downturn's a big deal too, right? It's good that we're able to turn it around, but man,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stress. And not only are you having to go to court, not only are you only having to do this, and the thing, like we tell everyone's like, you still got to manage your life. You got, if you got spouse, kids, all those things. So you got all those factors. So just, people that depend on you, and then you've got a downturn in your business and you're putting out negative noise.
Yeah.
So assembling, assembling the right people there, man, holy smokies.
And you're
Um,
also retaining negative noise in your head too, because when we get to those situations where it is a big deal, we know the risk, and then what happens is that we get into this never-ending cyclical replay within our minds. And unless we work on separating ourselves from that, that cyclical replay is going to create an entire new set of limiting self-beliefs, because it's inherent in its nature to do that,
yeah.
right? But it's
Yeah,
hard.
no, you're spot on there, especially in second chance resilience and stuff that we like to, that we'll get layered in here is that's a whole lot of reason to stop because when you hit cancel culture and you're actively being canceled, that's a lot to fight through.
Yep.
Without the right team, without the right support, without the right, because um, I had some folks that started getting negative reviews from all over the country because of a kind of a joke that they played that involves some political names, right? Like they named a food after a president type thing, and it
Did it blow up?
oh, it came, they was getting 5 stars, but they were getting 1 stars from people that never do business with them, right? So just, and I had told them like, my advice, respond, right? We're just exercising our rights to freedom just like you are. You don't have to, or if you do nothing, doing nothing does nothing. So you gotta say this, if you got a conversation in my head of a person that they had some solid 5 star reviews and they got their first 1 star. And she's like, I got a 1 star review. And I go, just respond. Just be like, hey, here's my direct number. If you don't have a direct number, just be like, hey, I'm Alice. Call this number and ask for me, and let me get to the bottom of what happened. And she goes, well, um, like I didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Don't fight that right there. There's a no win. Just all I care about as your business coach or your business advisor is that you respond and that you provide contact information. And I said, I can tell you that when I go to businesses, I scroll their reviews just to see if the owner is responding. If you're gonna that's a big deal. So something in this situation, like employee issues, how we started of not getting yourself prepared for employees and being a leader and creating maybe negative culture, whatever the situation is that led to this lawsuit and all the things, somewhere along the lines could have been bookended probably. It probably,
It also comes down. See, here's the thing. This lesson, what I've been, so this particular client didn't necessarily teach me a lesson, but it reinforced one that I teach all the time, and that is like, leaders are the driver of culture.
yeah,
They are. And you know what? Like there are all sorts of magazine articles and stuff that are like HR, HR is responsible for the culture. Well, HR is not responsible for the culture. The C-suite is responsible for the culture, right? But when you're bringing people in who don't align with your company core values, then you're going to get that person that seems to like there's something that I've taught for years. It's like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
yeah,
And then you're going to wind up having this person coming in because they think that they got, you know, tricked or they're disgruntled or something. You can't solve that all the time. Right? You can't change a person. And that's what I deal with a lot. Like, when I teach people how to deal with difficult personalities, right? There's there's a generation of people, and I fall into that category, you fall into this category, right? Gen Xers and up, like we were taught that, if we're doing, if there must be something that we've done that has created this situation. And although leaders are responsible for everything that happens in the business, there's a point where that last statement, that we must have done something, that's where it stops, right? If we're engaging, if we're having the right conversations with people, if we're holding people accountable and they're still not doing what they're doing, that's not on us. That is an individual's will at that point. So how do you deal with that will? I mean, now we're dealing with a higher level of narcissism within our own employees. I mean, you can't walk around a corner or take a look at anything on social media without running into it at some point in time, right? That's not on us, that is on them. But there are ways to work around that, and I have a course that actually I'm going to give it as a gift to your listeners here in a little bit. Yeah, it's a freebie, and it's going to help you like have a better communication with people who are not, willing to come to the table and are tend to be more problematic. And you heard me say one of the phrases already. It's called the course called Impact Scripts, and the sentence that you heard me say earlier is like, well, help me understand. Like, help me understand what's going on. Help me understand, how did we get here? Help me understand who all is involved. Help me understand why this person did this, right? Help me understand why there's missing information right here. And it's a way of cutting through to the drama and getting to the heart and the root of the question, because you're not addressing the drama, you're addressing the actual issue. And when you phrase it in that way, you'd be amazed. I've been using this phrase for over 20 years. It's a miracle phrase, right? I absolutely love it. So you can find this course over at heybrenda.com, because I joke around and say this is my Hey Brenda hotline every time I answer my phone, right? So you can go to heybrenda.com. You go ahead and put in, like, what was the one thing that you heard that wowed you today? And then you put in your name and your address, and then it'll give you access to this course. So this is my gift to you guys listening and being an awesome crew. But
Yeah.
but at some point in time, the other person, there's a level of responsibility that is involved with the other person. And we as leaders, we can't go down this trap believing that we are 100% responsible for everything that happens, because you are always going to be up against another person's individual will. It is our responsibility to address the issue, but it's not always our responsibility to fix the issue.
Big deal. Big deal there, right? Because it's you. Yeah. Um, what would you say is your ideal client? Like if they're gonna get your course, but they want to take it a step further. Who is your ideal client that you feel like should be calling you right now? They should have you on speed dial, or to get ahead of whatever. Like where do you like to come in and speak to that real quick so everyone knows the areas you work in, the problems you solve.
My ideal client, honestly, is somebody who wants to take their culture to the next level and is willing to do the work. It is a time investment. It is one that is well worth it. And also somebody who's not afraid to take a look back and say, you know what, maybe we didn't make the right hiring decision, or maybe we didn't have the right conversation with this person. Let's turn this around. Let's fix it. Let's see if we can't rebuild some trust here and help this process move forward, right? We don't necessarily know how to do that. We think we might have an idea, but we would much rather have somebody that can be on the outside looking in and saying, here's what we want to do. What do you recommend? Like, help us move us forward. Help us see where our gaps are that we can't see. That honestly is my ideal customer.
Particular size company.
None.
Or, yep.
No,
Good.
because this
So like,
applies, everything that I do applies to every company at every size, right?
yeah,
So,
everybody's got a voice. Yeah,
yeah,
especially.
absolutely.
I think it's great. You've got more stories, and you got more stories. So we're
I know you
kind
love
of,
my stories.
yes, we'll. What I hope, and because we hope you and I can catch back up and just go back through another case study or something like that for the greater good of the audience. And I've been doing some lives as well, Brenda. So if we
Oh,
wanted to
that's
have
awesome.
live with Brenda Q&A type stuff for
Oh, I
HR,
would love
or
that.
I don't know what that looks like, but maybe you and I can coordinate that at some point in time because. like I said, folks, I'm telling you, I was in the room. I was in the room, and she brought the house down, speaking that day, and I was like, "Holy smokies!" When and you're talking to, here's what it was a room full of. It was a room full of either a guy that almost sank in the ocean, and gun-toting Navy SEAL, Army, cops, right, all robbers, karate, all the things. And the HR lady brings the house down. The HR lady brought the house down amongst everyone else. So she has
Absolute
some.
total silence.
I was cliffhanger. I was like, ah,
I know
cliffhanger
what
moment.
I'm telling you. When I speak, it's really funny.
Ah,
So I have a friend of mine. His name is Nick Santos Nastasso, and Nick was born no arms, no legs, one arm, no hand, and one finger. Right. And he's like he toured on stage with Tony Robbins and speaking. Right now, he's the number one in demand speaker in China right now,
yeah,
and he's absolutely awesome. And he and I worked together on improving my transformational style of speaking. But I told him, and I said, before he even saw me get up on stage, I said the one thing that I see is that every time I get on stage, I see everybody's set of eyes. I do not see this. I do not see foreheads in a phone or the top of, or bald spots. I actually see everybody's eyes. And when I'm in my flow and I take a second, when I realize that, I have to like really watch myself because I can literally intimidate myself when I realize that every set of eyes, like
yeah,
I've got them wrapped. So then I go up on stage and he goes, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "You are right." He says, "You do that." And I'm like, I absolutely love going up and speaking. And I talk about the things that I talk about, things I experience is like every business owner's nightmare come true.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and hey, I've been an employee too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I've dealt with in law enforcement. Like we picked the pieces up in the aftermath of this, and you've been, so I was like, holy wow, right? You're there. You're the last hope before all is burned down and on national media for this
Yeah.
company. Oh, such an amazing story. So we'll loop back in. We'll grab one of those 7 p.m. live slots or
Oh,
something or
that'd
other.
be, I would love
Yeah,
that.
we'll promote it up, and then that way we can get your your most asked or dying HR questions. Um, and when I say dying, I shouldn't have said that word, right? Because it's workplace violence is
Oh,
can be
and
a
look,
big deal, right? So
I've lost employees too. Had two die within 48 hours of each other.
yeah.
Yeah. That was a rough week. So, I mean, yeah, there's very little I haven't experienced. And people are just like, how did you get involved in all that? I'm like, I got a job. This is what happens.
I'll have to put I'll use AI to craft a cool little reel for your friend being in prison orange, just explaining her side of all the how bad she was. So, man, thank you. I'm serious. Like, really amazing conversation. I know you a little better than some of my guests, and you absolutely bring the house down wherever you show up at. So, thank you for spending some time with us and making us better. And then I hope for our next session, we'll get that in the books at some point in time so we can come back on and
Oh, I
keep the
love it.
conversation going. Appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.